Hey guys, this is Dave, and I've got the Fiio / Jade Audio JT7, and this is the least expensive headphone I've ever reviewed, although that title will actually be handed over to the JT3 as soon as I finish that review. But again, for now, the JT7 is actually the least expensive headphone I've ever reviewed on this channel, and we're talking between about $110 up to $129 for these, depending on where you get them. But that's pretty inexpensive considering all that this has to offer. Of course, I've spent the last couple of weeks putting this through its paces, and I think I'm ready to share my thoughts on this. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Okay, so this is everything that comes in the box. Of course, this being an entry-level headphone, you can kind of expect the unboxing experience to be pretty basic and the accessories to be pretty straightforward. You basically get the headphones, two cables, a 3.5 and a 4.4, so that is nice. I like that they've included two different options there, a headphone adapter and then a soft carrying bag. And again, these are $129. Again, depending on where you get them. They use a 95 by 86 millimeter planar driver. It has an open back design. It has an 18 ohm impedance and a sensitivity of 92 dBs. The build quality is about what you might expect at this price point. It's good for the price, but it's primarily just made of plastic. It does have a spring steel headband, and I do like that it can be folded. That's kind of cool. It certainly makes it a lot easier to pack and travel with. The design is simple, but it is clean. There isn't really anything stand out about it necessarily, but again, it's good for the price. Fit and comfort are also good. It is mostly plastic, so it's also pretty light. The padding under the headband here does help with that, as do the soft pads. Weight distribution is good. Clamp force seems to be just about right for me. The pad openings are a little bit small, and I did notice that the pads kind of were sitting or resting on the outer edges of my ears, but again, they're soft, so it wasn't anything that necessarily caused actual discomfort. But yeah, considering the price, I do think that Fiio did a really good job, basically just trying to provide the best quality possible and the best comfort possible within their budget constraints. And I've always respected that about Fiio. It seems like they've always just put a lot of thought and effort in trying to focus on maximizing the attributes that really matter. And that certainly does show overall in the design and the build of the JT7. But what about sound? Well, let's go ahead and talk about that. So when these first showed up and I sat down to listen to them, I initially had this idea in the back of my head that I needed to properly set my expectations because, well, it's a budget set and there's only so much that you can reasonably expect in terms of sound performance with any budget headphone or IEM. And you know what? I was actually pretty surprised at how good they sounded. Not amazing, but certainly better than I expected, at least in terms of its general tonality and its general naturalness. So that was a nice surprise, and I will circle back to that in a minute. But I do quickly want to go over drivability and sources. You won't need much in terms of power, even though these are planars. However, on lower power output devices like the Tangent Stargate 2 here, I did notice that I had to turn it up just a little bit more. So I think I was at about 80 to 83 steps out of 100. And again, this is a 3.5, so that's using the 3.5 cable. But then when I connected to higher power output devices with 4.4 balanced outputs, I had way more headroom. For example, with the QX13, I was at about 65 out of 100 volume steps. With the Dawn Pro 2, about 75 out of 100 volume steps. So you'll likely be perfectly fine with lower output devices. But again, that's really going to depend on your listening levels and your listening habits. But how does it sound? Well, again, surprisingly good for this price point. It does take more of a Harman kind of approach. It has some warmth. The upper mids are a little more forward, and it's maybe a little bright in the treble. Not that it has a lot of treble energy necessarily. I would even say it's probably restrained in terms of overall energy, depending on what I was listening to. I did occasionally notice it having a little bit of an edge to it though. But to break things down a little more, starting with the bass presentation is actually pretty linear with maybe just a little bit of warmth. I'm also getting good bass extension, and I wouldn't call it mid-bass focused or sub-bass focused. Both parts of the bass tuning seem to be playing pretty equal roles. Now, as far as bass speed and just the articulation, again, this is a budget set, but I have to say, I think this driver is doing a really good job at general bass reproduction. It's not super fast, but I certainly wouldn't call it muddy. I would say the transition out of the mid-bass into the low mids was handled very, very well. And again, there is a little bit of warmth to its presentation, which means male vocals and some instruments are going to have a little more body. Not a lot, but enough to give instruments and vocals just a little bit of weight and keep them from sounding thin. In addition, of course, that kind of helps everything sound a little more natural as well. Now, as for the upper mids, they are more forward. So vocals are going to have quite a bit of energy. Probably it's going to be a little above my preference in terms of overall vocal forwardness, but that's just me. Otherwise, I have no complaints at this price point. Vocals have really good clarity. They sound natural. Again, if I had one nitpick, it would just be that they are a little more forward than I would typically prefer. The overall treble energy does seem to be a little more moderated, or maybe a little more relaxed, although I think I am hearing a little bit of lower treble energy that might be bringing out a little bit of an edge at times. And again, you can't really expect a super refined treble presentation at this price point. So while I wouldn't consider the presentation to be bright necessarily, on the contrary, it's actually overall, I think, more moderate when compared with the upper mid-range as far as the balance between the two. But there is some lower treble energy that can bring a little bit of an edge to notes. And while I did find myself occasionally backing off of the volume just a little bit, I don't know that it really ever reached the point of becoming fatiguing necessarily. So despite that small amount of sharpness, as long as I didn't push it too hard and just kept it at a reasonable listening volume level, the treble presentation was actually totally fine. And I felt like it reproduced cymbals and other higher stringed instruments very naturally. Treble extension was also pretty good, enough to give a sense of airiness and even bring out some of those micro nuances and some of those finer details. Speaking of details, technical performance was just okay. Soundstage wasn't intimate necessarily. It was pretty open sounding, and it had probably average left to right width, but not much in the way of forward depth and forward layering. But again, left to right instrument placement and separation was decent, although instruments and vocals maybe weren't super focused. Bottom line though is I was still able to get a good sense of where everything landed within the sound field, and I do feel like detail levels were actually actually overall pretty good. Now, as far as comparisons, you can pick up the Hi-Fi Man HE400 SE, I think for around $109. And that's a really good budget set. Some might call it a budget benchmark. The JT7 does a little better in the bass department. It's just a little more extended. Although I do think I prefer the upper mid-range tuning of the HE400 SE. It's just a little more relaxed in the upper mids, and it's just a little easier on my ears. But I still would give it to the JT7 in terms of just overall tonality and naturalness. Compared with my FT1, the FT1 has a completely different type of presentation altogether. It's more V-shaped, so more bass. Mids are more recessed. The JT7 takes more of a neutral approach with its bass. Mids are more forward. So the FT1 offers a funner, definitely more engaging listening experience, while the JT7 is just more focused on tonality and naturalness. Now, compared with the Beyer Dynamic DT990 Pro, an oldie, but not a goodie actually, in my opinion, but it's okay, I guess. But the DT990 Pro is also, again, more treble forward, and since the mid-range is a little more relaxed, that treble energy is even more pronounced. But that's by design. That's meant to expose imperfections in studio mixes. But then its bass, having a more of a mid-bass focused tuning, and again some extra low mid energy, it does give you some warmth and good kick impact, and then the mids are recessed. So the presentation is very different from the JT7. The treble of the JT7 is more relaxed. Comparatively, the upper mids are more forward, and its bass is just more linear. And generally, the JT7, in my opinion, just has better tonality overall. So it presents vocals and instruments more naturally. Its mid-range is cleaner. The bass isn't muddy at all compared to the DT990 Pro. It's just a better set all around, in my opinion. So do I recommend the JT7? Yes. And here's why. First, it's only $129. And for that price point, this checks a lot of boxes. It's got good overall tonality. It presents vocals and instruments naturally. You've got great mid-range clarity for the price. Bass reproduction is some of the best that I've heard at this price point as far as bass speed and just the overall bass naturalness. The build quality and comfort is good. It folds, so it's very easy to pack up and take with you. And again, for $129, I don't know if you can really do that much better. So considering its price, any little imperfections or cons that I can find about this set are really just nitpicks. Bottom line is, though, that this is just simply a great value overall. In any case, I think that does it for this video. If you are new to the Jade Audio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further, you can also support us through our Patreon. I'll be sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this review. Please like this video, please comment on this video, please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.